What's up, gamers? Welcome back to another episode of the Meta Update. My name is Joshua Joshi Howard, and let's go ahead and get right into the games in the list that happened over this past weekend. To start off with, it was another larger than average week. We had 66 players by my count, which is pretty big. Most weekends were in the upper 40s, low 50s. Maybe people are excited about the New York stuff or whatever is going on. Regardless of what ended up happening, there are several large teams events going around the world with lots of strong players in attendance in those. But partly because there were so many good players going to teams events, there were some surprise podium players, people that we wouldn't necessarily expect to have as good of weekends as they did. So congratulations to those of you who podiumed this last weekend. Also, Yarrick and friends are coming out soon, so I mean, if you thought guard was already good, we are going to become insanely powerful for the end of the edition and maybe early 11th. Who knows what 11th has in store? Anyway, like I said, we had a slightly larger week than average. 48.1% win rate last weekend was pretty bad, depending on what stat size you used. Stat site you were looking at, it was somewhere between 41 and 43. Either way, not very good. But let's go ahead and get right into it. So a lot of the lists I'm going to be showing you guys today are Doombolt guard lists. Again, if you are interested in this, I have put up a video probably about a month ago at this point in terms of lists that I would recommend and some basic ideas on how you're actually supposed to be playing it. So, to start off with, we have Bo Kirkwood at Radicalism, which is down in Australia, going 5 and 1 overall, playing a list pretty similar to the one that I recommended overall. Getting Gasland, getting Command Squad, 2 Command Squads, Norg Deadog, 2 Rogaldorn Commanders, 1 unit of 20 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Krieg, 1 Chimera, and a Torox, 2 Kazarkin, 2 units of 5 Krieg Engineers, 2 units of 5 Scions, and a Lehman Russ Exterminator. Overall, I'm not generally a fan of putting the third tank into these Doombolt lists. It is 100 and I think it's 180 points these days, so it's basically like Kazarkin in a truck or like Kazarkin of the Krieg Engineers, and I don't really think that this Lehman Exterminator really adds a whole lot to the list overall. But it does still, it is still going to be a strong enough list. You still have enough midboard presence. You have a little bit more long range damage, but overall, it ends up being pretty similar. Bo ended up beating Eldar, lost to Necrons in the second round before beating Tau, Necrons, Imperial Knights, and Tau again. So congratulations to Bo on the 5-1 this weekend. Moving over to France at Ludiverse, we had Rory getting third overall at a French event. Do remember that the French do not believe in playing singles very much, so every elo that you see coming out of that country is a little bit fake. But Rory going 4 wins, no losses, and 1 draw, with almost exactly different variation of a list that we've seen. However, one of the big differences between what Rory did and several other similar lists is, of course, cutting out the big Cadian brick. So there's no Cadian Castellan, it's just a Cadian command squad, 3 Sign command squads, Nork Deadog, 2 Rogaldorn commanders, 1 unit 10 Cadians, 1 unit 10 Catachan, 1 unit 10 Krieg, 2 Chimeras, 1 Torox, 3 units of Kazarkin, 2 units of 5 Krieg Engineers, and then 3 units of 5 Scions. So losing out on that really big anvil piece that you will oftentimes see in a lot of these Doombolt lists does mean that it is a little bit harder to force your opponent to, or like, you don't have the same kind of punish of big mistakes as some other variants of Doombolt tend to do. Because you can't just go and swing charge and just make your infantry move like 30 inches in a single turn. It is absolutely nuts. But overall here, Rory does go 4 and 1, or 4 wins and 1 draw, getting a draw in the final round, but beating Tau, Ultramarines, winning a guard mirror, beating Chaos Knights, and then getting a draw into Chaos Knights. So, of course, I'm a little bit surprised whenever I see close games from Doombolt Guard into any kind of Knight. They are generally very, very good, but losing out on that one big brick is a little bit tough. It is kind of nice not having that one unit going up against like triple despoiler, but overall, it is still a good result, getting third overall. So congratulations to Rory. I believe this is the first time we've seen, but there might be another name that I don't recognize you by. So congrats on that. Another player at the same event, we have Jolan Alex going 4 and 1 with pretty normal stuff overall. Cadian Castellan, Cadian Command Squad, 2 Sun Command Squads, 1 with a Quill and Eye for the extra AP, 1 with a Laud Hailer, probably just a point filler, 2 Rogaldorn Commanders, 1 unit 20 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Catachan, 3 Chimeras, 1 unit of 10 Rough Riders, 3 units of Kazarkin, and 2 units of 5 Scions. So obviously, a couple of changes here. The Catachan typically are going to be either Cadians or Krieg. Krieg are a bit more popular, and then the 10 Rough Riders and the 2 enhancements coming in instead of a couple of Krieg Engineers. But other than that, fairly normal. Again, I don't think that this is an improvement on the list that we normally see. Either the double Durn Doombolt that I have proposed or the single Durn Doombolt that Gustavo has been playing for a while. I don't think this is really an improvement on either of them, but still close enough, good enough for a 4 and 1. Moving over to some team stuff, we had a really large event in, oh, I don't remember if this is Germany or Austria. I want to say it's Austria, but it might be in Germany. Either way, at AlpineCon teams, we had Philipp Koenig going 3 wins and 2 losses. This is a pretty normal looking, or it's like, it's a two-door Doombolt with a couple of small changes to it. Kading Castellan, 1 Kading Command Squad, 2 San Command Squads, an Ogrim Bodyguard instead of Nork, a Rogaldorn Commander, 1 unit of 20 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Krieg, 1 Chimera, 1 Torox, 3 units of Kazakhin, 3 units of Krieg Engineers, 1 unit of 5 Ratlings, 2 units of 5 Scions, and a Rogaldorn Battle Tank. So using a little bit of savings by taking the Rogaldorn Commander, downgrading one of them to a Rogaldorn Battle Tank saves you 35. Taking a Chimera to a Torox saves you 10, so that's 45. And taking the Ogrim Bodyguard instead of Nork saves you another 20, so it's a total of 65 points being saved on a couple of different things. And in exchange, you get a unit of Ratlings. In general, my thoughts on the Rogaldorn Battle Tank are, of course, that it is fine on some maps, but there are, it's pretty good on some maps. But the other problem is some maps where you really want those two Rogaldorns to be able to be really far apart from each other makes it really hard to play on some boards. So just kind of keep in mind what mission pack you're playing on, what terrain you're expecting to play on, and look for whether or not you can split up your tanks or if you need to have them together. Because if you need to have them together on some boards, or if you cannot split them because you want to or because one of them is a Rogaldorn Battle Tank, it is a significant damage loss on the Rogaldorn Battle Tank if you can't keep it next to the Rogaldorn Commander. So it does create a couple of maps that are worse, and in exchange you get some Ratlings, which, they're okay. I don't think they are necessarily a big deal to the way that a lot of Doombolt lists tend to play. But regardless, Philip ends up getting wins into Emperor's Children, Thousand Suns, and a Guard Mirror before getting blasted by Dark Angels and a small loss into GSC. Moving back over to, I think this is the UK. I think this is somewhere in the UK. We have Ryan Cook at Lethal Hits getting first overall, and that is not a typo. There is an I there. Ryan Cook playing very standard stuff overall. There's just one change that we end up seeing in here. It is Kading Castellan, 1 Kading Command Squad, 3 Sign Command Squads, Nork Deadog, an Ogrim Bodyguard, a Rogaldorn Commander, 1 unit 20 Cadians, 1 unit 10 Krieg, 2 Chimeras and a Torox, 3 units of Kazakhin, 2 units of 5 Krieg Engineers, 1 unit of 5 Scions, and 2 units of 10 Scions. So the change here, of course, is changing a Chimera to a Torox, and in exchange, you can then turn 5 Krieg Engineers into another 5 Scions, which you add to one of the other bricks. Again, I don't think this is an improvement on the list. It does give you the tool to go punch something in the mouth very aggressively with the Torox Kazarkin, but you don't generally need that extra movement. And then the extra unit of Scions tends to just overkill whatever it's going for, and so we end up spending more points on a unit that does about the same thing. I think even if you want to take a Torox, you still just take the extra unit of 5 Krieg Engineers or an extra unit of 10 Krieg in these situations, because having the extra unit count is generally going to be more powerful. Regardless, though, Ryan ends up beating Guard, Blood Angels, Deathwatch, Blood Angels again, and Demons. So congratulations on the 5-0 to Ryan Cook. Moving over to Willen Games, we have Joshua Wood going 4-1. Kading Castellan, Kading Command Squad, 3 Sun Command Squads, Nork Deadog, Ogrim Bodyguard, Rogaldorn Commander, 20 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Krieg, 3 Chimeras, 3 Kazarkin, 2 units of 5 Krieg Engineers, 2 units of 5 Scions, and 10 Scions. So this is almost perfectly stock standard. Your only options here really are you can take a second unit of 10 Krieg, or you can take a third unit of Krieg Engineers. Joshua chose to take the extra unit of 10 Krieg in this event. Overall, Josh ended up beating Guard, losing to Tyranids before beating Agents, Dark Angels, and Emperor's Children. So congratulations to Joshua Wood on a 4-1. Moving over to more team stuff, we have at AlpineCon, we yet again have Gustavo Jose Barranco Verandas de Sousa going 5-0. And this is This is the archetype. This is the thing that you're seeing a ton over in Europe. It is very good. I have not seen any variants on the list that I think are an improvement to this one Dorn version of it. Of course, it is a Keating Castellan, Keating Command Squad, 3 Silent Command Squads, Nork Deadog, and Ogre Bodyguard, Rogel Dorn Commander, 1 unit of 20 Cadians, 1 unit of 10 Krieg, 3 Chimeras, 3 Kazarkin, 3 units of Krieg Engineers, 2 units of 5 Suns, and 1 unit of 10. Now, if you are trying to copy this list, if you are trying to play this, very important that the 10 Scions start on the board, but they are also equipped with volley guns. There are a bunch of matchups in particular where you really, really want the volume that the volley guns provide. And because you're already dumping a lot of command points into this, they do actually get a lot more value out of that than Meltas will. The lethal hits are way more useful. The ignores cover is way more important on the volley guns than it is on the Meltas. And then from there, it is a much better break at dealing with things like Necrons, at dealing with ACDC, at dealing with Recon, and there's a couple other matchups where you really want the volley guns, whereas the Meltas, you end up losing out on range a lot of the time, and it ends up having a lot of issues that way. Regardless, Gustavo beat Necrons in a small win before blowing out Dark Angels, Chaos Knights, Necrons again, and a big win into Sisters to close it out. So congratulations to Gustavo on 2 great weekends at teams in a row. Moving on, we got a couple of recon lists that end up doing pretty well. Before we go too far, I do want to give a shout out to Lyle Dixon, who went 3 wins, no losses, and 1 draw before looking like dropping round 5. Don't know exactly what happened there, but lots of recon stuff coming out yet again. Down at the Australia-New Zealand Team Championships, we had Jawad Salah going 3 wins and 2 losses with, I think this is the exact same list he took to the Anzac Cup last weekend, or maybe the weekend before. 3 Castellans, 3 Keating Command Squads, Commissar, Gunskos, Ursula Creed, 3 units of 20 Cadians, 1 unit of 20 Catachan, 1 unit of 10 Catachan, 5 units of 10 Krieg, 2 units of 10 Rough Riders, a unit of Kazarkin, 3 units of 5 Krieg Engineers, and 8 Cyclops. So, yeah, basically the exact same thing this weekend. Jawad ended up beating Thousand Suns twice, blowing out Custodes, small loss into Tyranids, and then a big loss into Eric Lathuris's GSC. So well done to Jawad over at ANZTC. Going right on back over to Europe, we have Alpine Con teams. We have Pascal Haberstrom, I believe German, but maybe Austrian. Pascal playing very similar stuff to what we've seen Nemo play in the past. I believe this is the exact list that Nemo ended up taking to Pyra Cup. It's 2 Castellans, 3 Keating Command Squads, a Commissar, Gunskos, 3 Ogre Bodyguards, Ursula Creed, 3 units of 20 Cadians, 1 unit of 20 Catachan, 1 unit of 20 Krieg, 4 units of 10 Krieg, 10 Rough Riders, 5 Rough Riders, 3 units of 5 Krieg Engineers, 5 Ratlings, and a Scout Sentinel. So really important thing about this, I've had a couple people asking about why are we taking the Krieg Engineers in Recon. And the main thing is that they make a couple of matchups way easier. If you're playing up against something like Magnus or Angron or anything that is toughness 10 or higher, 2 up, 4 up, or like Winged Demon Princes or like Land Fortresses or like Land Raiders, these big units that are very, very tough for Recon to kill otherwise, having the ability to just throw mortal wounds in it with the remote mines and also cycling grenades into that does give you an opportunity to kill it over the course of several turns very efficiently. So that's why you tend to see these Krieg Engineers popping up more in Recon. They solve some problems that the rest of the list kind of doesn't have an answer to a lot of the time. Either way, Pascal ends up getting a smaller win than I'd expect into Guard, a smaller win into Emperor's Children before big wins into Imperial Knights twice, and then a big win into Drukhari. So well done to Pascal. I believe this is the first time I've seen him play Recon, but not the first time we've seen him play Guard. All right, another very normal archetype. We've seen this plenty of times before. 2 Dorns, 2 plus Vanquishers. We have Mark Fidge at Radicalism down in Australia once again. Keating Castellan, Keating Command Squad, 1 Scion Command Squad, Nork Deadog, 2 Rogel Thorn Commanders, 1 unit of 20 Cadians, 1 unit of 10 Krieg, 2 Toraxes, 2 units of 5 Rough Riders, 2 units of Kazarkin, 2 units of 5 Krieg Engineers, 1 unit of 5 Scions, and 2 Lehman Raz Vanquishers. Overall, this is fairly similar to a lot of Doombolt lists, but it does have the 2 Vanquishers in there, which does significantly change the way it plays into certain matchups. Certain things where you want to be able to just go toe-to-toe in shooting lanes with a couple of opposing armies, like maybe Gladius, maybe Tau. It does give you a couple of different ways to attack those kinds of boards. Mark ended up losing to Tau in the first round before beating Blood Angels, Imperial Knights, Drakari, Chaos Knights, and Votan all in a row to end up going 5-1. So congratulations to Mark on the first time we've seen you in one of these videos. Next, we have another classic style of list, midboard and tanks. We've been seeing this over and over. This was very popular during the combined arms days when that was the most common detachment we were playing. Has become much less popular now that Doombolt has kind of taken over in a lot of ways because it kind of approaches the game in a similar way. The first one that we have is Leipzig Major. We have Marvin Peterson going 4-1. Bit of an interesting list. It's a Cadian Command Squad, Gaunt's Ghost, 2 Rogaldorn Commanders, and Ursula Creed. 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 1 unit of 10 Catachan, 2 units of 10 Krieg, 2 Chimeras, 1 unit of 5 Rough Riders, 2 Field Ordnance Batteries, 2 Kazarkin, 3 units of 5 Krieg Engineers, and a unit of Ratlings. I'm not gonna lie, I've said this a lot so far today, but this has a lot of similarities to a lot of Doombolt style of lists, and adding the 2 units of Field Ordnance Batteries, I think, ends up making this weaker overall. You end up not having as much tools to just push the midboard. And for, I think it's 210 points, we're spending a lot of points. So it's 210 points on the Field Learners batteries. We're spending an additional 30 points on Ursula Creed as opposed to having the Cadian Castellan. And we end up spending a lot of points that ends up just kind of sitting in our backfield, which is no longer playing for the midboard. So it does make it a little bit more tough in a lot of matchups. The Field Learners batteries are pretty decent into like Drakari in particular. Really good at killing the Scourgers, really good at killing the Hellions. But other than that, they end up being like questionable on how well they actually make their points back. Either way, Marvin ends up getting a win into GSC, a big win into Grey Knights, a big loss into Tyranids, a medium win into Tau, and a big win into GSC overall. So well done to Marvin, and congrats on the 4-1. Over in the UK at Warhammer World, we have Robert Kimpton going 4-1 with another list that kind of feels like somewhere between Doombolt and some other lists. It is a Cadian Castellan, 1 Cadian Command Squad, a Scion Command Squad, an Ogren Bodyguard, 2 Rogaldorn Commanders, 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 1 unit of 20 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Catachan, 2 Chimeras, 1 Taurox, 1 unit of 10 Rough Riders, 1 unit of 5 Rough Riders, 2 Kazarkin, 1 unit of 5 Scions, and a Leman Vanquisher. So this ends up being a list that has like a little bit of everything, but ends up not necessarily specializing as well. And so these lists are still powerful, but they tend to be a little bit harder to play than a lot of the other like Doombolt or Midboard and Tank style of lists where they are really trying to push one style of being good at, or where the list is trying to push one way of being good at Warhammer. This kind of list that is a little bit more spread out does tend to have a little bit more difficulty. You do have to be more careful with your deployment. You do have to change your deployment and your early game plan a little bit more than some of the other armies that just have really strong plans in the first place. Either way, though, Robert ends up getting a win into Guard, Demons losing to Ultramarines before beating Custodies and World Leaders. So congratulations on the 4-1 over at Warhammer World. Next, we got a couple other lists that are a little bit different, things that don't really fall into some other categories of things that you might expect. The first one at Lethal Hits, we have Rich the 95th Oliver going 4-1. He actually played up against Ryan Cook in the first round, and then had much easier opponents throughout. But still, congratulations to Rich for this one. He has a Cadian Command Squad, a Catachan Command Squad with the Quillen Eye, a Commissar with Abhuman Detail, a Leman Russ Commander with the Executioner Plasma Cannon, Lord Solar, Nork Deadog, 5 units of 10 Cadians, 1 unit of 5 Rough Riders, 2 units of 6 Bulgrin, 1 unit of 5 Death Riders, and 3 Leman Russ Executioners. I won't lie, I don't think this list is that strong. Couple of things about this. So the first one that we're looking at, of course, is the fact that the 5 units of 10 Cadians is probably the weakest battle line that we can generally take. You have one that's going to be attaching to the Cadian Command Squad. You have one that could be left at home if the Cadian Command Squad isn't just hanging out on your home objective for a while. And then you have 4 units of 10 Cadians that would be definitely stronger if they were Catachan or Krieg. This list is desperately asking for a little bit more scout in the army, and so having an extra couple of units of scout would really be helpful. And then the 10 Krieg are definitely way more difficult to remove because if you have one remaining, they res D3, allows you to scam primary, allows you to discourage units from even going to try and chip the Krieg because it just gives you bonus movement off of that. The other big thing here is the Luminous Executioners are tanks that are just not actually all that interesting. You hear a lot, it's like, oh, they're really good at trying to kill Marines and Marine-shaped bodies. But we have an army that has the Rogel Dorn in it that is one of the best units in the entire game at just removing Marine-shaped bodies. So having three Luminous Executioners, which I think they're 170 right now, we're very quickly in a spot where instead of taking the three Luminous Executioners plus the Luminous Commander, this is like starting to push this should just be three Dorns if you're trying to take like this kind of damage. The Dorns are notably difficult to kill because the toughness 12 does mean that things like las cannons are winning you on fours, and the extra wounds end up being quite a bit more powerful. The other big thing about this list that ends up being a little bit awkward is the fact that you have the Catachan Command Squad with presumably Nork Deadog, but you have Lord Solar and the Commissar. The Commissar can attach to the Bulgrin, but then you become very at risk of getting precisioned out and losing the ability to order the Bulgrin entirely for the rest of the game. So if Lord Solar is attaching, the Commissar becomes at risk. If the Commissar is attaching, then Lord Solar, you have to be pretty accurate with his movement, otherwise he can end up dying pretty pretty easily as well. And then you start losing a lot of your CP, you start losing a lot of your ability to order. Um, Rich does lose the first game before end up winning his next four, but I'm not sure that I would recommend that other people try to pick up this list on their own if you're trying to do well. If this is something that you just have the models for, you can go for it, but I think there are going to be other things that have been in this video that I would generally recommend instead. Next, we have Lane Nussbaum at Montana Beerhammer going 4-1. This is a very similar list to what Lane has been playing for months, right? I saw him play something very, very similar to this at Challengers Cup, which is 6-7 months ago at this point. It is still a good list. It is still going to be in combined arms. It is a Cadian command squad with Grand Strategist, two Rogaldorn commanders with death. One of them has the Death Mask, so it always has OC even while battle shocked. 2 units of 10 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Catachan, 2 units of 6 Bulgrin, 1 unit of 5 Rattlings, 1 Luminous Exterminator, 1 Rogaldorn Battle Tank, and 3 Scout Sentinels. So the big thing about this list is it does have a lot of damage, right? The Rogaldorn commanders plus a Rogaldorn Battle Tank and a Luminous Exterminator means that you have 3 Dorns and an Exterminator, and then Scout Sentinels, not only are they relatively fast on the board, they're annoying to deal with, but they also give you the reroll 1. So you have the lethal hits and the reroll 1s, and you kind of get the best of both worlds between Combined and Grizzled Company. The downside of this, of course, is there's not a super obvious like reinforcements target, but it also means you don't necessarily need to be banking CP in order to get that reinforcements off, right? If you aren't going to be really prioritized on getting an extra unit in the game, you still have some pretty darn good stratagems between using a lot of the base stuff like grenades and tank shock, and then the fields of fire for the extra AP that you can put on, like a unit Cadians or a Rogaldorn Commander in order to basically just pump up a Rogaldorn to make it do a ton of damage. And the AP is always relevant, whereas the Ignores cover is not always relevant depending on what you are shooting at. Anyway, Lane unfortunately loses his first round before beating Eldari, Emperor's Children, Chaos Knights, and Drukhari. So well done to Lane on the 4-1 this last weekend. Lastly, the most interesting and most unusual list we've saved for last. This is also played at AlpineCon Teams by Manuel B.E.L. Witzerek, going 1 win, 2 losses, and 2 draws. So not the most exciting event overall for Manuel, but we've seen him play for a long time. We've seen him play all kinds of weird stuff, particularly in Bridgehead for over a year at this point. Manuel had a Cadian command squad, Gaunt's Ghost, 1 Sign command squad with the Shroud Projector, so it can't be overwatched, 1 Sign command squad with the Bombast Fox, so it can give out the same order 3 times. Ursa Creed, 20 Cadians, 3 units of 10 Krieg, 2 units of 10 Scions, 1 unit of 5 Death Riders, 3 units of Kazarkin, 3 units of Krieg Engineers, and a Scout Sentinel. And then to round it out, He also stole his agent slot, which is always surprising, especially in a team's context, with a Deathwatch kill team. So the thing that you see with like all the Thunderhammers and a Watchmaster, which I believe gives you fallback advanced shoot and charge, just lets you do whatever whenever you want. Um, it's kind of an interesting list. It, for so many points, the Deathwatch kill team and the Watchmaster end up being in kind of a weird spot because this is like 300 points, and while it does give you an opportunity to melee like Marines and vehicles reasonably well, a lot of people you could take like 10 horses and it'll end up having a lot of the same effect. Um, Other big thing here is having only 2 units at 10 suns ends up being a little weird for a lot of bridgehead lists because you don't necessarily have that third hammer, right? One of the big things that you generally see with bridgehead is if your scions get to shoot, if they each get to shoot once, you probably lose. If you get to shoot all of them twice, you probably win. But this kind of removes that and adds kind of like a win condition that I feel like requires your opponent to mess up a little bit more in the Deathwatch kill team and the Watchmaster. So this list is interesting. I don't know how good it is. It looks like a lot of fun, again, not something I would necessarily recommend people try to pick up. If you're interested in trying to play Bridgehead, I would generally recommend for inspiration at things that were very popular, like during the Index or early Codex, um, because they still work, right? The big problem with Bridgehead is not that it doesn't do the damage. The problem with Bridgehead is mostly just that it has real issues trying to like open transports, as real issues trying to deal with T10 or higher to up save things. So like land raiders and land fortresses are existential threats to the way that Bridgehead likes to play. Anyway, Manuel ended up getting a small loss into Blood Angels, a medium win into Drukhari, a small loss into Death Guard, and then draws into both Chaos Knights and CSM. Um, Kind of interesting, right? One of the big things is this looks like Manuel was getting a lot of pairing resources and not necessarily coming back with the scores you would want for someone that is like really focused on trying to get specific matchups, right? Losing to Blood Angels and Death Guard and then getting a draw into CSM is not really something you want from Bridgehead. But getting points and getting blown out, I suppose, is always going to be better. With all that said, that is the last list that I have to show you guys this weekend. It was an interesting one. Lots of teams, like we said, not necessarily the most interesting new list. We just had a couple of slightly odd ones, partly because there's a bunch of players who we have not really seen before, starting to have a little bit more success. But again, if you are kind of tired of all this, just remember Yark is right around the corner. We're getting a new patch, and that is going to drastically change the landscape for a lot of new stuff. We have a bunch of stuff coming out in the next couple of days, or like the next couple of weeks. I will be doing roundtables for both the new detachments, Steel Hammer and oh god, I want to call it Armored Recon, but I don't remember what it's actually called. Whatever the two new detachments are called. If you're interested in coaching or the Discord stuff, hit me up on Discord or Reddit, and I'll go ahead and send you more information about that. Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys all next time. Bye bye.